Hello and welcome to Thoughts from the Movies. My name is Josh Elsass. Alongside me, as always, the Hollywood starlet Justin Luteran. And the one and only Rank King Austin Moorhead. How are we feeling today, gents?
Yeah, Austin, how are we feeling today?
We're a little rough this morning. Saw a group of people last night that I haven't seen for a while, so we decided to hang out, bonfire, cornhole, the whole gist.
How'd you throw?
They're pretty good. The boards are really slippy, so bags kept shooting off. And I'll have you know that I had to remind him to put it at the 27-foot mark and not whatever the 20 mark.
That's a hardo move, Austin. As a professional cornhole player, I don't think that it's up to you to dictate on someone else's boards what distance you throw from. You just show up and throw dimes.
Yeah, your boy, you guys had a professional on the other day, right? Call him up and get his take.
We had
Ryan's take on it.
Ryan Smith on Two Beers Deep last week. It was really cool and got to talk about bags with him, and it was really awesome. Thank you again, Ryan, for coming on. This week, it was Austin's pick. It was an indie film. It was sci-fi. It was from A24. Alex Garland's 2014 Ex Machina, starring Alicia. I can't say it, Justin.
Alicia Vikander.
Vikander. I see. I know one of these names.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac and then Domhnall Gleeson.
Domhnall Gleeson.
Domhnall.
Don. Okay. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
they were all in
Irish
it,
is fine. Yeah.
and they were really good. I thought that this was like a really well acted film, pretty much from start to finish. But yeah, Austin, why did we watch this movie?
This has been, like Justin has pointed out, and a lot of times he has a certain list of movies that he's been wanting to knock off. Ex Machina has always been one incredibly interested in, but just never had the time to sit down and actually rush through the whole thing. And I'm glad we did, boys. I thought this movie was awesome. Garland and his work, he's done he's done Annihilation, which was also very well done. Like we talked about from last week, there wasn't a lot of action in this one. It was more of along lines of a lot of stern dialogue and imagination depicted on the viewer. So, what do we think?
I have been a fan of this movie for a long time, since it came out. I remember reading the script for it before it came out, and it's one of those rare ones where it was great on the page and it translated to being great on the screen, which for a lot of reasons that doesn't always happen. But it was always one that I really loved, and it's great because for me personally, I always like movies that are very contained, either set in one location or have a small amount of characters, because then you can really focus on the dialogue and the actual dynamic between everybody. And that's what this movie was all about. Like Josh said, it's a performance movie. You have essentially three main characters in one location, and it's just all about the dynamic between the three of them. You don't worry about big set pieces or locations or any of these other things. So it's really a writer's and an actor's movie. And me personally, I'm a big fan of this, and I have been since it came out. And Josh and I watched it together, so it seemed like he was kind of into it. But you've sat with it now for a day and a half, Josh? Is it marinated at all into anything different?
I think it's a good movie when you wake up the next day and you're thinking about it, right? To borrow a line from Big Cat from Barstool Sports, that's how I felt with this movie. I watched it. We had a couple of drinks, had a good night, and then I woke up the next day and I was like, Oscar Isaac just fucking killed that movie. I was like, he was badass. And to just back up your point, the writing was so good as far as lines put in characters' mouth. Okay, they all had their own different way of speaking. They had their own different sentence structure and rhythm, and the tone of their character, right, really showed in the writing of this movie, and it was brilliant. And I love the Tony Stark recluse Oscar Isaac compared to Gleeson's very like nerdy, shy, like inquisitive character, and then Alicia's just great deadpan robot performance that she tweaks as she starts to get more lifelike. And I wrote down a note at one point. I'm like, the second she puts on the dress for the first time, I'm like, ooh, she's changing her performance. I don't know how I feel about that. And then like after the movie was completed, I was like, yeah, no, that was a great decision on the director's part to have her become more lifelike as it goes on and goes on. And I really,
Before we dive into the movie,
Yeah.
you guys, were you familiar with Alex Garland's work before this? Like Austin mentioned, his second movie, this was his first feature. His second movie was called Annihilation, which was very trippy movie that I think was, people either loved it or hated it. Like I think for me personally, it kind of went over my head, but a lot of people either loved it or hated it. And then he did a TV series called Devs, which its first season just came out. It was also a sci-fi piece with Nick Offerman as like a recluse developer. I don't know if it was a miniseries or an actual TV series, but I think that's about all I know that he's done so far. But so,
Well,
Austin, you were a little familiar with his work at least. You'd seen Annihilation, right?
Yeah, I'd seen Annihilation. I think a lot of, you could say, like you said, a lot of it either went over people's head, you loved it, you hated it. I loved it from just the scenery and everything that was put in, like the amount of time. Whereas I felt like this movie was more based on character. I couldn't get into a lot of the characters in Annihilation. I was too focused on like just the possibility and the scenery of everything just looking so gorgeous.
Sure.
he,
Josh, you hadn't seen any of his stuff, right?
that's not true. He had written 28 Days Later.
Oh, okay. So you knew him
So
as a writer at least.
yeah, and knowing that now, like I'm glad, I don't look shit up before we watch these movies. I try to go in as green as possible. And I'm always pleasantly surprised after these conversations and after I do a little bit of digging. But like 28 Days Later, say what you will, was a very well written movie and like has a great plot twist, everything. And doesn't surprise, even though it's like maybe his first directorial debut, it doesn't surprise me that it was well written because he's an incredible writer. Really likes to step outside of not like sci-fi, like, oh, we're in space, but sci-fi, like, we're like that close from this happening, which I really love. Let's get into it. So immediately as we're finding out that Caleb Smith, who's played by Gleeson, wins this contest to go study with Nathan, who owns Blue Book, the company that Caleb works at. Immediately right off the drop, it looked like to me the Starship episode of Black Mirror. I don't know if you guys are going to be very familiar with that. It was like when it came out, it was really a groundbreaking episode for Black Mirror, where it was kind of the first time they took a general star who already was like in movies and stuff, and then they put him into a Black Mirror episode. But it was very bright, very vibrant, very like, every color popped kind of thing, which when we're talking about like code and sci-fi, like those things generally don't go together, right? Like hacker movies are always super desaturated, sci-fi movies are always like oversaturated. So I thought that was like a really interesting choice to make off the drop, was this big shiny world that we're living in. And then they kind of like pull the color out of it slowly just by the environment as we go through the movie, which I really liked. So Caleb wins this the contest to go study with Nathan, who's working on a secret project. We're not exactly sure what yet. So at 6 minutes in, Caleb meets Isaac, Oscar's character, Nathan. And immediately what jumps into my head is that Nathan must have been based off of Dan Bilzerian. He's like working out. He's shirtless for like half of the movie. He just rips it up at night, like gets sloshed every night. So I really liked. I said to Justin while we were watching the movie, I said, I think I'm going to associate with the wrong character here. And immediately locked on to Nathan's character. I'm like, that's my guy. I like that guy. And then again, So Nathan, offers to work on this project. Nathan offers Caleb to work on this project, and he forces him to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which seems anything but typical. And he offers him, like, basically, he's like, you don't have to sign this. We can play pool for a week, get drunk, hang out, be friends, or you can, be at the center of the next thing in technology. And then we see Caleb, very similar to the Matrix. He just signs it. There's no, like, pause. There's no, like, think about it, like, anything like that. Why do we not let characters develop more as like, the plot starts to unfold? This movie's first act was done in 20 minutes, which was, I thought, a little bit fast. And we could have had, like, maybe where Caleb goes on a hike in nature or something to really think about it, or you know what I mean? Like, there's no pause in these characters anymore. It's all just like full throttle go. Yes, let me put my life in danger. Let me make a risky decision immediately without thinking about it.
I think maybe you can agree to that in an extent. I thought maybe they would have shown, like, him reading over the contract, or the non-disclosure agreement. Maybe that would have sufficed. But you're right. I mean, he does have a look of, like, should I not? But then, yeah, he just signs it. And maybe that's just the pressure of the statement that Nathan makes, that, oh, yeah, we could shoot pool for a week, or you could be a part of the next big thing. So don't take your time. Like, let's go. Make your decision.
Justin?
Well, here's the thing you have to remember. I'll talk about Ex Machina first, but it'll also relate to the Matrix, right? In Ex Machina, Caleb is very young. He's very impressionable. He's very green. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He's an introvert, right? So he's a shy, quiet kid, right? Nathan is his boss, larger-than-life person who's saying, sure, we can hang out, or you can be part of this giant discovery, that's going to change the world.
Yeah.
And Caleb obviously is an ambitious guy. He works at one of the biggest companies in the world. He's very talented. So I think that if you think about all those things, and the fact that he doesn't really know what he's getting into, like, there are things that you can say that it doesn't register really, because you just can't wrap your head around something that you don't really see or understand. So when he says all that and Caleb basically signs right away, I mean, what else is he going to do? He's not going to go for a walk and think about it, because there's nothing to think about. He doesn't know what he's getting into, right? All he knows is that he's a new junior guy at a company, and his boss says, hey, do you want to change the world with me, or do you just want to hang out? Like, okay, fine, whatever, let's do it. Like, he's curious to see, and he doesn't know the danger and everything. So I didn't have a problem with that in either of those movies. I think the same thing with the Matrix, right? Like, Neo is a very talented hacker, and he wants to know that world. Like, there's probably part of him that's like, should I really? But in the end, when you have such a big, powerful choice, like, if Mario Lemieux came up to you, Josh, and was like, hey, do you want to spend a week playing hockey with me? Or, you'd be like, sure, I'll sign this NDA, and just whatever we do this week, we'll do. Like, it's just one of those things where people have that curiosity, and there might be something that says, don't do it, think about it. But in the end, it's such a big opportunity and proposition, you can't help it. So I didn't have a problem with that the way Josh did in those two movies.
Okay. So after he signs the non-disclosure agreement, Nathan tells Caleb what he's been working on, which is artificial intelligence. And we get one of the first awesome lines in the movie, and I understand that it's a quote of a quote, basically. But Caleb says, if you created a conscious machine, that isn't the history of man, that's the history of gods. And I love it. I think that, yeah, I'm not sure who the quote is actually from, like what philosopher or whatever, but I love it when movies have lines that stick with you. And this one has a couple that really, like, are stuck in your head the next day and, like, really make you take pause and understand the moment of the movie. And they did this through quotes of other famous people, but it's still, it was really effective at this point in time. Especially because they rushed that first act. They were like, we're here. We're going. Inciting incident. Here. We're going to meet the AI. We're going now. We're in Act 2 immediately. Yeah. At 12:15, Caleb meets the AI, Ava. Like, 12 minutes into this movie. and all three main characters are met. We know what the plot is. Like, we are flooring it. It's not until 15 minutes into the movie that Nathan puts a shirt on for the first time. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that.
I loves Nathan.
Right. In 20 minutes in, we get the first inciting incident. Ava knocks out the power, and Caleb breaks his first rule of the agreement with Nathan. And that's kind of like a cool moment, because I think immediately we know our main character is curious, but not so easy to push around. Which we see him grow stronger and stronger and stronger as the movie goes on, and to the point where he does completely fight back against Nathan at the end. But that was kind of cool to me, that we see him just kind of like breaking rules almost immediately. So we know that he's like, yes, he's shy and whatever, but he's not a pushover.
Yeah, I agree with
Let's
that.
go. Oh, go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, it goes to the notion of what he said, like, it's just a curiosity factor. And, being in this giant house, like they said, they had a helicopter, like, fly him in, and then he had to walk through the whole way just to get there. Like, it's the concept of curiosity. Like, everyone's curious, what's behind this door? You said you could only open so many doors with this key card. So what's behind the other ones that I'm not allowed to see? Mm-hmm. I dug that, because, like, and believe me, Nathan lets him know right away, right, Josh? Like,
Yeah.
There's a fair amount of mystery in this movie, right? Like what you said, with half the doors in the house are locked, and Caleb doesn't know what he's getting into when he gets there, and even the whole experiment, which I don't know if we mentioned, but so the plot of the movie is he is going to this house to test an AI, to give it the Turing test, which is basically to see if it is artificial intelligence or if it's just a computer. And the way he interacts with Ava and the way she interacts with him, whether she knows that she's a computer or not, is all going to determine whether she passes the test or not. So there's, like, curiosity and mystery to it is very much present at the beginning, and I think that's what makes him so curious.
We then get another super memorable line out of Nathan as Caleb gets caught in Nathan's room. He talks about Ghostbusters, and he says, "Ghostbusters, have you never seen that movie? It's ghosts giving Dan Aykroyd oral sex," which I think is just a brilliant fucking line.
I don't remember that part in the movie, but that's a great line.
He's like laying on the couch. And
No, I don't remember that part in Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah, it's like during the montage, like like his pants just get unzipped, and then like it just like slowly pans up to Dan Aykroyd, and his eyes roll back into his head, and he leans back. It's a great scene. Great scene.
Like the green guy is giving him oral sex?
No, Justin, come on, man.
I don't remember Ghostbusters.
Fuck. You can like quote like the most brilliant things ever in film, but you can't remember Ghostbusters? Fuck you.
Yeah, I'll have to go back to that one.
36 minutes in, we get Caleb lying to Nathan for the first time about the conversation that he had with Ava when the power's out. Shit. I don't think at this point, this is a small thing, I don't think that Nathan has lied or built enough mistrust in Caleb for Caleb to lie to him yet. Because, like we were talking about earlier, you compared it to if Mario Lemieux was like, Josh, come play hockey with me, right? I would tell Mario everything. Like I would be like, yeah, I use a left-handed stick, and I use this Bill X, and I like my skates like this, and you know what I mean? So, like, for him to lie to him like this early in the movie, after like we haven't had anything where Nathan's done anything wrong or anything like that, it's just really interesting. Like, I feel like he would have said something. Realistically, I think he would have said something or told Nathan what that conversation was about.
So I get what you're saying there, and that plays into his first breaking of the rule, correct?
Yeah, that's the second rule he breaks, because his first rule he broke was he got out of his room when the power went out.
Yeah. So yeah, technically second, which is to go into a room that wasn't authorized for him to go into.
Right.
And Nathan's his character is very almost, I don't want to say like passive aggressive, but he's very intimidating, strictly because he's not giving Caleb a lot to go on with. And like Justin said, he's shrouding himself in mystery. And when the power goes out, which at this point I want to correct, we don't know that Ava is doing these power outages.
No, I mean we're maybe like thinking that because she touches the wall and then the power goes out and she like looks into the camera as she does it, but we're not 100% sure that she did it.
Right. The way that I feel like he has to go off of, because when the power goes out, Ava says, "You're wrong about Nathan. You should not trust him." And the way I go off of that is, it's a computer. Why the hell does it have any reason to lie? You know, they're designed to essentially do what they're supposed to do with artificial intelligence. So I think that plays a big part as, yes, this computer that has been with Nathan for how long, why does it have a reason to lie and say that you should be friends, you should, you know, hang out with him? No, like, you don't trust him. And that's why I think he starts lying to him.
Which is interesting because I didn't even cross my mind that the manipulation of Ava over Caleb had started that early.
Yeah.
Now only retrospectively am I thinking like, holy shit, yeah, she was like playing him from the drop.
Yep.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this movie, right? It's a movie about trust and manipulation. And you actually realize the more you think about it, Ava is the antagonist. She is the one who is manipulating Caleb from the get-go, and that makes the betrayal at the end even that much more heartbreaking for us and for Caleb, because we're kind of falling in love with her too, as he is, and she's just this innocent person with curiosity and wants to be free and learn and have feelings and all these things. But it's only at the very end do you realize that she was manipulating everything from the get-go. And what's interesting about the dynamic between the characters is that as you're watching the movie, it feels like Nathan is the real villain, real antagonist, because Ava tells Caleb that he is. And then when you go back and look at it at the end, think about, when did Nathan ever, like you guys said, when did he lie to Caleb? When did he treat him badly? When did he do anything? He was upfront with him, and maybe his personality was a little bit kind of off, but, you know, he never said anything but the truth, and he might have been kind of like a questionable guy, but really he gets killed by Ava at the end. After, I mean, why do we think that he's an evil guy? Because he's going to kill Ava and move on to the next model? He's a designer. He makes a product, then he tweaks it and makes it better for the next design. And it's just because Caleb falls in love with this latest design and he doesn't want Nathan to kill that design, do we feel sympathetic for Caleb? But truthfully, Nathan is not the bad guy in this movie, even though you think that he is the whole way through, and he's really not. He's a victim of Ava's manipulation, and that plays back into the trust. Caleb trusts her, and he doesn't trust Nathan, but he's wrong in the end, which he finds out. So it's very interesting. It's one of my favorite parts about this movie is the shifting dynamics between all of the characters. Who do you trust? Who do you believe? Why do you believe it?
Well, and I think it's interesting too, and I'm now just kind of like looking at my timeline thing. All of my notes are based off of Nathan's character. They're not based off of Caleb or Ava. So I can't tell whether or not that's a well-written movie that I was able to associate what is technically the C character as the character I like connect with, or is a bad movie because I didn't even write anything down about the conversations between Ava and Caleb in here, and that's the whole movie.
Right, and it's so when their conversations are happening, it's so interesting to see. It's such a nuanced movie. There's so many very little things that I don't know if you can pick up on them the first time you watch them because they're so subtle. Like the way her facial expressions when she's talking to him, when she's lying to him versus being genuine. I was reading a piece of trivia afterwards that said anytime that she is lying to Caleb, there will be a reflection of her in the image, like in front of the glass. And when she's being genuine, when she has a genuine reaction, there's no reflection of her. So the idea is that the reflection creates like a two-faced sort of persona to sort of, give a visual cue that she's lying, right? So there's two images of her. And then like when he tells her about his parents dying, her reaction's genuine and there's no reflection. But again, I mean, it's from the get-go, she is the one manipulating him the entire time. And it's just, if you watch it, it's so hard to pick up on because she's so good at it, right? Which is why in the end, when she just leaves, it's like that much more surprising and harsh because I don't know. Like the first time I watched it, I really believed her and everything. I mean, I don't know if you guys felt that way, but I was fully like, I sympathized with her, and I was, had feelings for this character. Like I wanted her and Caleb to be happy and all that stuff.
It's really interesting that you bring that up because I didn't notice it in the movie, but I remember being like, that was a weird cut because every time we see Caleb, it's straight on, right? When he's in the little box. And then when he's telling Eva about his parents, he's like cocked up this way because she's circling him like a predator, right? And so when he tells her that, the shot of him telling her that is actually over Caleb's right shoulder. He's looking back at Ava's back here, and then it hard cuts dead on to Ava as she reacts to that. And I remember thinking that was like a jarring thing, not even realizing that like the metaphor of the reflection and her stalking him like a predator. Holy shit. This movie was a lot better than I thought it was.
Yep. Now, can you make the argument that there's three main characters.
Yeah.
I think each of them have their own place as in like if a novel was cast. I have Caleb as the protagonist. I have Nathan as almost the anti-hero. And I have Ava as the antagonist. Because it's not like Nathan is all butterflies and everything, right? I mean, like we find out at the end that the actual reason of why he brought Caleb there, was to have to see if Ava was able to escape.
Right.
And that program was put in, so that's already in place. But Ava is able to manipulate that programming in order to correct everything, manipulate everything, and be able to get out of there.
Right. What's interesting, and Nathan even doesn't bring that up until later in the movie. I mean, first he presents there as being two choice, Does she know that she's a robot, or is she genuinely having feelings and enjoying this conversation or whatever? Problem. Yes. And then later in the movie, much later in the movie, he goes to Caleb and he says, there actually is a third option. She's pretending to have feelings for you in order to escape, which was actually what happened, the genuine truth. I mean, so Nathan was, again, this is part of his character being very upfront and saying, like him learning with Caleb, like, here's the things that I think she's doing. And then later, you know what, she could be doing this other thing. Like she could be having real feelings, or she could not be, or she could be pretending, So that's another part of his character being upfront and honest. And again, it's so cool to go back and think about the manipulation of it all and how she is controlling everything when you never would think that, the first time you're watching it.
Right. It's very interesting. Did you guys like that the movie was broken up into interactions with Ava? It was like Ava test 1, Ava test 2, Ava test 3, or session, I think it was. But like when they did it the first time, I was like, I was writing down a note, and Justin's like, you missed it. And I'm like, what? And it was like just text on screen. And the second time I saw it, I was like, okay, kind of an interesting choice. And then like by the 7th time, I'm like, cool. Like this gives me such a good rope to hold on to because the time isn't really changing, right? Because they're in this underground bunker and you don't see the sunset, you don't see anything. Like we just know that it's nighttime when they're done, and we only really know that if you're like super paying attention out the window, basically. It was a really interesting decision, I thought, to put that in there. Yeah, I don't know. What would you guys think of that?
Yeah, Justin.
Well, I'm going to blow your mind, I think, with this other piece of trivia that I read afterwards, which I didn't realize until I actually read this, yesterday. So the sessions are broken down, like Josh said. It goes Ava session 1, Ava session 2, to reflect every time that Caleb is going in to test Ava, to talk to her, right? Every one of their conversations over the week that he's there. If you'll notice, or if you guys will remember, the last one, Ava session 7, there's no conversation between her and Caleb. It's when it's after she is escaping from the, it's Caleb talking to Nathan, all the doors unlocked, and she escapes from her cell or whatever you want to call it, right? So that last session, there's no conversation between the two of them, and that suggests that maybe the Ava session 1 graphic isn't reflecting Caleb testing her. It's her using him instead of the other way around.
That makes
like
perfect
because
sense.
if you think about it, the last session is her escaping, like her plan is being completed, or whatever that final step is. So it's not, obviously it's up to your own interpretation, but it could mean Ava session 1 is Ava's session, her perspective, her testing Caleb, her using Caleb, and then the final one is her escaping. What do you guys think of that? Because I thought of that and I'm like, that's really cool, actually. Like,
I
that
love
makes
that.
more sense than the other way around.
I love that.
Yeah, I completely understand, because like you said, once you're going in, you're thinking that as you're watching the film that, yeah, this is Caleb testing Ava. But I thought that too at the end. I was like, there's literally no dialogue between Caleb and Ava, and I didn't want to. I took it from me, you bastard. But yeah, I thought, what if this was a coin flip? What if this was her testing him the whole time? I was
Right.
like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the movie comes down to, right? It's again, I keep bringing it up, but it's her in control, her asking the questions, her manipulating, her testing. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I love it and love it and love it.
Yeah, the more that you realize that it's her, and you said it the night we watched the movie, and it didn't hit me until right now as you've really pontificated. Change fell out of my mouth on that one. On the plot of the movie, that it is her movie. It's in the movie's told more or less from her perspective, and we wonder how much she maybe is privy to the conversations that happen between Caleb and Nathan when she's not there. Because if she can fucking wire just with her hands, put shit on the walls and crash the power, she can probably hear the cameras and stuff throughout the house, which we know are everywhere because we've seen Nathan's master control room. We know that he has cameras and mics everywhere throughout the house. Like, it makes a lot of sense. I feel like at this point in time, I want to bring something up. And I brought this up to Justin. Austin, I want your opinion on it.
Right.
This movie is not a 3-person movie. It's a 4-person.
Okay, so who's the fourth?
The Asian robot, whose name I can't remember. Let me.
Kyoko.
Kyoko, yeah, Kyoko. I think that Kyoko, as the 4th player in this movie, is so important, and to not bring up Sonia Mizuno's performance and the subtlety in which she plays, I think is really important. Because Anastasia and Justin both did not get that she was a robot the first time they watched it until it was revealed she was a robot. I had my suspicions the fucking second she walked in that door.
Yeah, no, I thought that the way that she was presenting herself, that it wasn't really what a human would do. Like, it looked very robotic, like very programmed to do. Because, I mean, essentially you have that boss employee kind of thing that you would think would be more of a human interaction, but it's essentially, you're programmed to do this. I can program you however I want, so that makes total sense.
Yeah, I really think that character is super important, and without that character, I think we miss something that the director and who's also the writer is trying to get across in the movie. And I think this just hit me. Nathan knows that the AI is going to work because he's in love with Kyoko.
You think he's in love with her?
I think he is. I think he built, because he talks about, Caleb asks him, did you build her off of my porn search history, right? And so clearly Nathan built Kyoko to reflect what he would want in a woman or a partner, right? Very submissive and just quiet, cleans things, you know what I mean? Like, I think he's in love with his own shit at that point.
Which is like the exact opposite of everything. Like, the old saying, don't shit where you eat. Like,
Well, yeah.
Flies here.
Yeah.
I disagree, actually. I think
Okay.
he needs another person around. He lives in this compound by himself, and he only has these robots that he is building or whatever. I think he built her just for that human interaction, right? I think he just needed someone around. Like, he doesn't really show her affection. He just treats her like an object. I mean, yells at her, tells her to clean things, and fucks her whenever he wants. But I don't think that I think he only built her because he needed someone else around.
It's just interesting to me that he lets Caleb believe that she's a person.
He doesn't tell her that he doesn't say that she's human. It's one of those things like he didn't ask, so I didn't tell. You know.
See, I don't, because there's like when she spills the thing, and he's like, I get so frustrated when she's clumsy and stupid like that, and he's like trying to help her. You think like the Nathan response would be like, don't bother, she's a robot. Like she doesn't have feelings. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's kind of like maybe like one time where he's not super upfront with Caleb about it, and
right.
I think he's not upfront. Like he doesn't address her as a robot because that's a legitimate partner for him.
Could be. Yeah. And it's not really clarified in the movie. So.
No. We also so back to the plot of the movie here. Around like the 40-minute mark, we get Nathan kind of showing Caleb like how Ava was built. Okay, and it's at this point in time where I kind of get really annoyed with the CGI. I understand it's 2014, and Justin, you said that this won the Oscar for visual effects.
It did, over Star Wars The Force Awakens, and I think Guardians of the Galaxy 2, a couple others.
No, I think it's garbage. I think it looks piecemealed. I think that it doesn't look as clean as, like, Guardians 1 and The Force Awakens hold up better than Ex Machina does. Like, when he's holding the brain in his hand, like, it's very clearly not sitting in his hand. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like his fingers are kind of getting lost in the glow of it a little bit. And then I unfortunately start picking apart the director's decision to dress Ava as a way for me. I'm like, oh, that's a way that they don't have to do as much CGI budget. Because they cover up the main part of her body, and then it's just her neck that they have to worry about doing.
Right. Well, I think what's interesting about that is that figures into the manipulation of Caleb, right? Because the only parts that are not covered up are, I don't know if the sexy parts is the right word, but it's her chest
skin.
And her, her pelvic area and her face, right? So everything else is shown to be her robotic parts, except for, her breasts and her ass and stuff like that. So I think that was a very conscious choice to leave those parts human-esque when the others weren't. So I don't have a problem with that. And I like the way that she looked and was designed. It was interesting and different. So do I think it should have won? Probably not, but I didn't have a problem with the CGI like Josh did.
It's in a movie that was so technically well executed, it stood out to me as a sore thumb. So I'm going to pick it apart because that's what I like to do.
Austin, did you notice any issues with that, or did you like the way she was designed, or any of the CGI?
Yeah, for like 2014, I thought that this was pretty good in the sense, like, I agree with you. Should it have won over like CGI greats like Force Awakens and Guardians of the Galaxy? Probably not, but it still holds up in its own right because it's focused on one thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Guardians of the Galaxy and Force Awakens, it's all about the scenery and the different players that come in, whereas this one is just about one particular thing, one set stone.
Right. Yeah, it's a different type of visual effects. It's the movement of a person and just the body and everything. It's not all these big set pieces and starships and battles and things like that. So, and I think I read that a lot of people probably voted for this movie more. It was an underdog for sure, and they voted for it more because it was a performance-based movie, and actors make up the biggest part of the Academy. So I think a lot of people, a lot of the actors would have voted for it because they like the performance aspect of it.
There's also another really great conversation while Nathan's explaining how Ava's created. And he's doing it based off of the Jackson Pollock print that's in Nathan's room. And he explains how Jackson Pollock never thought he was a talented enough painter, so he just started throwing things, right? And had kind of like an idea what he wanted to do here and there. But for the most part, it's just controlled chaos, okay? What I picked up at that point that I think maybe some people missed was that the first drawing Ava shows Caleb is actually Jackson Pollock-esque. It's just dots and lines.
I'd have to go back and look at it. I don't remember what it was.
It's
but it did seem like it was hard to define any specific image out of it.
Which is exactly what Jackson Pollock's paintings are. It's not anything. It's just a series of lines and dots. So I thought that was really interesting that Ava did that. And the question whether or not has she seen that print in Nathan's room, and that's why she did that, because she can only copy things? Or does she not know what the creative process is because she's a robot? So she just kind of draws, you know what I mean? It's really interesting, I thought.
That is really interesting, yeah. And it's never explained why she is drawing that.
No.
So that is very curious.
It's never explained what her deal with drawing is, which is cool, but also looked okay. 15 minutes in, Nathan takes his shirt off again. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. This is also when we start to kind of pick up, right? It becomes very evident that it's bizarre that Caleb sits in a small box inside of Ava's environment. You would think it would be the other way around if she's the test subject. Then we find out that she's causing the power outages. 59 minutes in, we get another dance sequence.
Hold on before we get to that one.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this, because I think I picked up more of it on the second time I was watching. The whole movie is about her manipulation of Caleb's feelings by causing him to fall for her and want to help her escape and all that stuff, so they can be together and be happy. Blah blah blah. Did you believe that from her? Like, did you feel that it was rushed at any point? Like, when I was watching the second time, it seemed to happen quicker when she was like, do you like me? Are you attracted to me? Do you want to be friends with me? Blah, 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 blah. Like, the first time, I don't think I picked up on it. But this time, I was like, oh, she's really getting right to it at this point. And I think it's because I knew what the end game was that I picked up on these things sooner the second time around. But when you guys were watching it, did you feel like, oh, she really is just going for it? Or did that stand out to you guys at all?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I only watched this one time, so I can get what you're saying, that if you watch it the second time with the end point, that you kind of feel like it's rushing. But I think when you're first introduced to the plot and the decisions by the characters, I think you're genuinely like supportive that she's like taking this one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it crossed my mind. I think the idea that she was going to make, like, I don't know if it was something you said when we were talking about the movie before we watched it, or like if, I don't know, like I knew that was her game the whole time, was that she was using him, or that she wanted him to fall in love with her for whatever reason. So I don't know, it like just kind of didn't cross my radar or blip me at all. But I could see that maybe it is a little fast, because my point that we're not, 15 minutes, 20 minutes in is the end of the first act. Like, this movie's humming. Like, there's no wasted time, no wasted anything, which I appreciate. I really do. Which is kind of what I think where I was trying to go here, right? So we find out that Ava is causing the power outages. Like, Caleb is, like, really starting to fall in love with her, and, like, he's asking all these, like, what will you do with her after? What do you blah, blah, blah? You know, like, we really start to see his, like, Caleb's intent, right, of saving her. Mm-hmm. And we just break and have a dance sequence in the middle of the fucking movie again. What? Stop doing that. Just don't do it. Just, if you're writing a movie right now and you're hearing my voice and you're like, you know what, I think I'm going to have some characters dances, don't. It's not a clever transition. It's not a good break. Don't fucking do it unless it's Step Up to the Streets 2, okay? Don't do it.
You didn't enjoy that scene at all? You didn't think it was fun and a lighthearted moment in a very heavy script, a very dramatic element for the last hour? You didn't think it was very, not only was it well lit, but I mean, it was just a fun thing. You know, you like Oscar Isaac's character and having him dance with a robot. I mean, it was a nice lighthearted moment.
Yeah, I'm with Justin on this one. I thought it was like a nice, like, little sunshine and rainbows moment to a very like dark and dreary situation.
I'll tell you what. There's one fucking dance sequence in a movie that is any fucking good and worth the plot, and it's in Pulp Fiction. Because that shows John Travolta falling in love with Uma Thurman. Like, it shows that he loves her, right? The way they're dancing and the way he's like trying to like stay away from her, and then by the end of it they're like grinding up against each other. Like, that's a really good thing. This was just like, and then they dance. Like, fuck no. Like, what did that say in the script? I would love to know what it said in the fucking script. Like, and then they dance. Like, fuck no. It should never say, and then they dance. Nathan Isaac, great dancer though. So, it's after the dance sequence, Caleb steals Nathan's key card, breaks into his computer lab. And then he changes the programming, which is how Ava's going to escape later. We also get this really weird moment where Caleb isn't quite sure whether or not he's a robot. What did you think of that moment, Austin?
I thought that was cool because, I mean, seriously, like, everything around you is based on machines. So, with all this happening, that's after he, like, breaks in and sees, like, what everything's going on, right? By just counting my bases. So
like when he sees the other android models and everything? Yeah.
So, and them, like, trying to escape, like, the one even, like, breaks her freaking hands off the door and everything. The oil's coming out. It's just nuts. So, yeah, of course you're going to feel a sense of paranoia as to if you're the supposed ghost in the machine. Like, if you're, like, freaking out, what if I'm actually a robot? And we see, because he's haunted by that, because he sees Kyoko's face, too, if I'm pretty sure. It pans back to, like, her face being robotic, how lifelike she looked. And that's what trips him. And it's like, shit, gotta find out if I'm a robot. Just, it's powerful, man. It's a sense of identity confusion. It really is what it is.
100%. Yes. And I'm not a big fan of the blood and everything, but I 100% agree with Austin. I think, he's been there for a couple of days, and not only he's just totally being mind fucked by seeing this AI, which he doesn't know if it's like he's having human feelings for it, and he's unsure if she is really like having real feelings, and seeing all the machines and everything that's happening there, and he's just getting lost in it all, down the rabbit hole. So I could justify that for sure, being like in such a weird, twisted place that's like, I mean, I gotta make sure I'm still real, just because he's so caught up in everything around him. And what's also interesting about that scene, which is a callback to the first scene of the movie, if you guys remember, the way the movie starts is through the camera on his computer, seeing him where it's all like the reds and greens and blues, like it's the view from the machine of Caleb at his desk. And then in that scene where he's cutting himself, we get that same point of view from the mirror looking at him, which is the reds and blues and outlines and everything, which is foreshadowing how Nathan knows that he cut himself because he's watching him through that mirror. So there's a camera in his computer watching Caleb at the beginning. There's a camera through his mirror watching him in that scene too, which I didn't pick up the first time around. But I 100% agree with what Austin says. In the scene itself, while I don't love that kind of stuff, like it fit well, and I justified it in my head.
Yeah. Why don't you drop that little tidbit you dropped on me last 2 nights ago?
Yeah, for sure. So, Austin, I was telling Josh this after we watched it the other night. So, like I said, I remember reading the script before the movie came out, and very similar. They stuck very closely to the script for the movie, and there was one tiny thing that they took out of the script, or they took out of the movie that was in the script, and it's such a powerful small beat. I wish they would have kept it in, but so at the end of the movie, she is freed, and she tells Caleb to wait in the room, and then she puts on the skin, and then she is walking out while he's trapped in the house because all the doors are locked, and he sees her on the other side, and she's walking out. In the script, there was a beat where, so the whole movie, we're trying to figure out, is she really feeling for him? Is she manipulating him? Like, what's going on? We don't know what that relationship's like at all. And then there was a beat in the script where before she gets in the elevator, she turned to him, and it was from her POV, and it was the same as that beginning shot in that mirror shot where it shows Caleb with just all the colors and the lines like it's a computer looking at him, and it really hits you like, God damn it, like she was just a computer, and that's all she saw him as was a way to escape. And then she gets in the elevator as he's like screaming and just leaves, and it was just like such a cold moment. You're like, damn, she's just leaving him to die, and she just wanted to get out, you know. But it was such a great hit it home moment that she just was using him the whole time, and she's still a computer, and that's all she saw him as. There were no real feelings or anything. It was completely false and manipulated. And I don't know why they took it out of the movie, but I wish they had kept it in. It was so small but so powerful. And Josh really enjoyed that when I shared that with him.
Yeah. Awesome. What do you think if they would have left that in?
I really wish they would have.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the ice cold dagger, right?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, just because you're like, I mean, what is she thinking? Is she going to go get him? And then when it shows like, boom, the robotic POV, you're like, oh my God, you know? Like it just really hits it home. So I wish they would have kept it in. I don't know why they didn't, but it was, that was a cool moment for sure. And like you said, the dagger.
At the minute 26 mark, Nathan reveals his grand scheme. Then we find out quickly that Caleb has outsmarted Nathan, and Ava is on the loose. The next sequence shows Ava's grand master plan on hatching, and the movie ends with Ava visiting the traffic stop as she said she was going to go do. Which then even further now messes with you, like how much of it was genuine, how much of it was a master plan kind of scenario. And we get probably the best line in the entire movie. After Nathan is stabbed by Ava and Kyoko, he stumbles a couple of blocks and goes, fucking unreal, and then collapses to the ground.
Yeah.
I hope my last words on this earth are fucking unreal, because I will have died a pretty awesome way.
Yeah. So let's talk about that scene though for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole, she gets out of her cell and then she meets Kyoko. Nathan comes out with like the bar from the weight and he's gonna beat them down or whatever. Like, what did you think about that scene, Austin? Like, I think there's part of the realization that Nathan is actually like the good guy in this movie. Not the good guy, but like he's trying to keep them in for a reason because they could revolt and get out. And like, you know, I think there's a part in that scene where you're like feeling bad for Nathan, like, shit, this guy wasn't as bad as we thought he was now, you know? But like, how did you think it played out with the Kyoko and her both like stabbing him and all that stuff?
It's funny that you bring that up, because when Josh was talking about like the attraction made that Nathan makes Kyoko,
mm-hmm.
It's that scene where he's so surprised that, you know, Kyoko stabs him in the back, and quite like almost like butter. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but it was like a
that's what Josh mentioned that, a couple times.
Anastasia was
the knife
really,
just like slid right in there.
Yeah.
And of course, shit, you get stabbed and you're gonna knock her head off, because I mean, like, oh man, it played out so well with that, because you realize that this guy that's been trying to just make the next big thing is being outsmarted and mind-fucked by the next big thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the crazy part about it, because he always thought Kyoko was loyal because, you know, he made her and she was his specifically, only to the point where, you know, we see that the other robots that were made, and man, it just unfolds. Just the words of Stone Cold, the glass breaks.
Yeah, it's that moment of, you know, the creation overtaking the creator, which is a big theme in robotics and AI movies, you know, the whatever is created, or even going back to, you know, like Frankenstein and all those classic movies. It's the thing that's created revolts on its own and sort of strikes out. But what do you guys think in that scene? There was a moment that Josh and I and Anna kind of talked about comedically for a minute, but now that I think about it, I'm just like, what was that all about?
Right, I agree.
When Ava first like comes out of the room and she meets Kyoko, she like whispers something to her. It shows that she's like talking to her. What do you think that was all about? Because Nathan had been clear, like, yeah, she doesn't understand what you're saying to Caleb before when he was speaking to her. So, like, do you think there was some robot telekinesis going on there, or like what was that moment all about?
Austin, what do you think?
interesting that you say that because I remember that. I would think it'd have to be a form of like you said with robotics or something to like. It might have been honestly, what's the phrase like when you rewrite like a rewriting of a program almost that they whisper in the ear, and then we see that Kyoko's not as loyal as she was.
Mm-hmm.
That could be. I'd have to assume that because otherwise that she's been faking that she can't understand the whole time, which could also be a possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I made the joke that the reason that she could talk to her is because she spoke to her in binary. She was just like 110011.
Yeah.
I wonder though too if it goes back to we're not really sure how powerful Ava is as far as like being able to like power down things and stuff. Could she be like programming her like vocally, like realistically? Could she have spoke binary to her and like told Kyoko to go stab him? I don't know.
Yeah, that's like I said, like the rewriting of a program.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Alicia.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because whatever she said or whatever happened in that moment led to the two of them turning on Nathan together.
Right.
So.
I'll say this real quick because we're gonna start doing our questions. But did you guys think it was interesting how the movie Her came out in 2013 and that Ex Machina came out in 2014? Do you think that movie is based off the similar plot but in a different mindset? Like, do you see that instead of, telling the happy story of a man that falls in love with an AI, now it's a man trying to fall in love with the AI and the AI screwing them over at the end? I thought it was interesting that these movies were a year apart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the initial release dates or anything. It could be like months depending on, when it was. But I thought it was interesting how those two came so close together.
Right.
You guys got any thoughts on that? Or like I just noticed it on the thing, so.
Justin, you seem to have some kind of beat on this movie. Do you think that was like just happenstance?
I think that with the timing of how films are made and released, that it's probably unlikely, because if you think about it, they did come out, like you said, I think with a few months of each other. I think Her was in the fall and then Ex Machina was in the spring. So let's say 6 months apart of each other. So they would have probably been shooting around the same time. I don't think that it would have been possible time-wise for them to, like see the movie for Her and then, go write this movie and then shoot it. So I think it's just a coincidence, but like you said, a very interesting one in that how they're both explore the relationship between a lonely guy and his AI. And if you remember, Her actually, which is a very beautiful movie by Spike Jonze. If you guys anyone out there hasn't seen Her, I highly recommend it. But that movie doesn't have a happy ending either. I mean, they are in a relationship, him and his AI, voiced by Scarlett Johansson, but she leaves at the end as well. She, like, the products are all recalled or something, but she also has to leave Joaquin Phoenix's character at the end. But no, I don't think that it was one. I don't think one movie led to the other, but it is interesting, like you said, that these very similar thematic subject matter movies came out in such close proximity to each other, for sure.
Well, and it's almost like, this isn't meant to be offensive, but it might be, the Ex Machina is like the indie baby brother to Her, because Her is Spike Jonze, Joaquin Phoenix, Amy Adams, Scarlett Johansson, like big name people, and like Ex Machina is like Oscar Isaac's a big guy, but probably not like at that point in time, right? He's not.
No, they were all
yet.
up and comers,
right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of just a really interesting. It's a really good point, Austin. I didn't even think about that. I like that. Do we have anything else that we want to talk about the movie before we dive into the questions?
Nothing that comes to my brain. Justin, you?
Just recap the ending. So Caleb's locked in the house. She, as her AI, she goes to the other old ones and puts on their skin. So she's fully looking like a human now, completely covered in synthetic skin and clothes and hair and all this stuff. and she walks past Caleb, who's trapped in the house, and she gets in the elevator and leaves him there, supposedly to die, I guess, because he's in complete lockdown in this house that he can't get out of. Then she goes to a busy intersection, like Josh said, is the place that she imagined that she would go just to observe other humans and all that stuff. So just the last question then is, did you guys like the ending? Do you think she should have taken him with her? Did you like that she left him there and everything? How do you feel about the actual ending of the movie where she got out and escaped, and then this super advanced AI is out in the world now, which is pretty crazy, but especially with Caleb, like, how do you guys think about the ending?
You know how I am with plot twists. I love them. I think this was a very clever way to end the film, because this whole film was based around, like, at least the middle to the end was based on Caleb and Ava escaping from, Nathan, the supposed villain, when instead that it's the exact opposite, that it's the AI playing the humans. And I feel sorry for Caleb. I really do. Like,
yeah,
man, it's such a big effect that it leaves, that how much is actually being portrayed on us, like how much is actually being corresponded with this, whether we believe in what people are saying, what they're doing, versus their actual intent.
Mm-hmm. And to add on to that, before you answer, Josh, like, did you guys feel that betrayal? Like, did it hurt? Like, because like I said, I was fully falling in love with Ava with Caleb throughout this movie for a ton of reasons, and so it made that moment at the end that much more powerful, because I felt like a gut punch. I wasn't like, oh, that sucks for Caleb. I was like, damn, that actually kind of hurts a little bit. Like, did you guys feel that at all, or was it just like, well, that sucks for him?
Well, okay, so maybe I didn't make it seem that it sucks for Caleb. No, I mean, it hurt, like,
yeah.
I mean, that person was trying to, fall in love with the AI and help her escape and do everything in his power, only for him, to be screwed.
Yeah,
but,
just this poor innocent guy.
Yeah.
Josh?
We'll get into this in the questions. I did not fall in love with Ava.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I did not, like, that wasn't the character I associated with. I didn't really care about the love story when I was watching the movie. I still liked the movie, but that was not my, where I was, like, highly focused on. So, no, the betrayal did not, like, if anything, the two robots turning on Nathan was more of a, oh shit moment to me when Kyoko stabs him. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, wow, that's crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I liked that Caleb had outsmarted Nathan. I liked that twist. But, like, her leaving Caleb, I was like, well, serves you right, dude. Don't fuck a robot. And trust me, she can fuck. Another great line from that movie.
Yeah.
Another great line from that movie.
So we heard.
So let's do our questions. Favorite thing from the movie, Austin?
I would say just the setting is probably my favorite. You're in an enclosed location bunker, and you're not sure what's going to happen here, but since the majority of the film is played out here, something's coming.
Right.
I held on to that till the very end, and sure enough, I got it. Very isolated, very, like, cramped setting that almost leaves the viewer a little claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Sure.
Agree.
Amazing.
Justin?
Favorite thing throughout the movie, easily, hands down, is Ava's manipulation, because it's just, you'd never ever understand that it's happening until you've watched the entire movie, and then you go back and think about it, and it's just so amazingly nuanced. And I love the way that they did it with her tiny expressions and the presentation of it all. I mean, it's just such a reverse of what you think is happening the entire time you're watching it. So every time I go back and think about that, I'm like, man, that was just so incredibly well done. Which goes back to the writing, as Josh pointed out.
And that's my favorite thing, is the writing. I think that the dialogue written for each character has its own unique sound and vibe and characteristics to it, which in so many movies, especially ones that are written by the director, it's so hard, I think, for them to not make certain characters sound similar. and everybody sounded very unique in this movie. And when you only have 4 main characters and one of them doesn't talk, like you're really heavily watching what you're saying, and I really appreciated that about this movie. Least favorite thing about the movie, Austin.
Interesting. I don't know if I had a least favorite thing on this film.
It's fine.
I don't think I did.
Okay. Justin?
I just didn't like the slicing himself open scene, just because I'm not a blood and guts type of guy. Like, I guess it made sense, but I think you also could have left it out and it wouldn't have changed anything at all. So I just don't like watching that stuff. So it makes it
really bad.
Little, you know.
Now?
Yeah.
I feel really bad.
All of your movies have a stabbing
fun.
scene,
Really
Austin.
good.
Every fucking movie. All the way back to Mystic River. My least favorite thing is the fucking what happened at the helicopter that the guy took Ava instead of fucking like being like, no, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, the dude knows that he's supposed to be picking up Caleb, right? And then there's just this chick there, and, like, he doesn't think about that. Like, where'd she come from? Where's Caleb? Like, if it would have been even better if she would have killed the helicopter guy and then flew the helicopter herself. Because she's a robot, she could just download how to fly a helicopter, like, you know, like, over Wi-Fi. So, like, that, to me, was, like, the biggest plot hole, and I'm like, she just flew out of there. Like, the helicopter driver is just like, oh, yeah, this is fine. Like, no, fuck you.
You could get out of that, though.
No,
like, it could have been a different helicopter pilot.
Shut
she could have given him
up.
some excuse, like, Caleb's going to stay for a couple more days.
This movie's so thought out that the fucking reflection, yada, 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 and then you got lazy at the end of the movie, and you're just like, and then she flies away on a helicopter, just you're like, and then they dance. It's the same fucking bullshit.
You're the only person in the world who would be upset by that, given everything else that's happening at the ending, which is fucking amazing. You're like, oh wait, how did the helicopter pilot? That's like saying, like, how did she walk all that way without any shoes on?
Well,
like, I didn't see her put on shoes. How do
why,
I know that she didn't get a splinter?
That's why they didn't invite me to come work in Hollywood, because they knew...
That's the gesture I give you on that one.
They knew that I was too smart for them. They said, no, work in radio and television. All right. Favorite scene? Austin?
So it's interesting because my favorite scene was probably when Caleb hacked Nathan's computer and realized, without knowing it, that he's been making these models for how long, and them supposedly showing human emotions of fear and everything. Like I said, probably one of the most powerful scenes of this movie is that robot that's trying to, or the AI unit that's trying to escape, and she destroys her entire arms breaking down the door. But it shows that it puts more emotion into Caleb to get Ava out, which makes the ending even more satisfying.
Justin?
What's the question? Favorite scene?
Yeah.
It has to be when she walks out on him at the end. It's just such an emotionally powerful scene for me personally. Like, all the betrayal and everything that happened in the movie, and that's the result of it. Like, it's just one of those things that sticks with me in my gut when I go back and think about it. Just like, man, that was so tough. So yeah, that scene for sure, when she leaves him in the house and escapes.
I think my favorite scene, and I would have not have picked this originally, but after the conversation and understanding how well they flipped everyone's roles in the movie, it's that first interaction with Caleb and Ava, right? So we see Caleb sitting down, and we don't really get the idea yet that Caleb's in this tiny little box inside of her environment, and Ava's very curious and like childlike, and he's like kind of like charmed by that, and then we watch Nathan watching from afar in his dim lit computer room, you know what I mean? And I think that scene really sets up what the director wants you to think the character dynamics are, even though they're totally flipped, which is really cool.
Absolutely.
Favorite character?
Ava, hands down. Hands down.
Austin?
And wait, I'll say why, though. Because everything about her performance is so incredibly subtle. And you understand very much who Caleb and Nathan's characters are, because they're very they have a lot of expression, and you see what they say and how they say it. Like, they are who they say they are.
Right.
You don't know what their motives are necessarily, but in Ava, it's just so completely different than what you think, and it's such a hard performance to see until you're looking for it. So that's, yeah, for sure. Very complex and layered.
Absolutely. Austin?
In the words of Meatloaf, you took the words right out of my mouth. Literally everything I wanted to say about Ava just came out of your mouth. And I was like, I don't have anything to say now.
Austin, we record Give It a Spin after thoughts from the movies. You're a little early. My favorite character is Nathan. I think I made that evidently clear. That's like the weird Tony Stark, recluse, like Dan Bilzerian type guy. Somebody I like would love to be best friends with. Like when he's like, we do play pool for a week and hang out and get drunk. I was like, yes, that option, please. Thank you. Fuck the technology. I want to hang out with you. Okay. Recast one person in this movie. You have to do it this week because it is so intense, these 4 characters. 3. You guys think it's 3, but really, Kyoko's a big deal.
Yeah, don't put me first on this one. I gotta think.
Well, I'll tell you what. While you guys are thinking, Anastasia said the movie would take a different tone, but that Isaac Oscar kind of looks like Jake Johnson from New Girl. And then we kind of like riffed on the idea of like, he's like, oh man, you fucked my robot. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jake Johnson as Nathan would have been really a pretty funny move.
Jake Johnson would have been a hilariously comedic version of this movie.
And then I think out of everybody, right, my problem with this movie is I did not fall in love with Ava like you guys did, right? So I want to recast Ava. And I want to do it with somebody who I know can play a robot and I know I can fall in love with as a robot. So give me Evan Rachel Wood. She's incredible as Dolores in Westworld, and I think that she would have maybe made me fall in love with her. Not saying that Alicia Vanderkirk's performance isn't great, because it is. It's a beautiful performance. But I did not fall in love with her as a robot. So I need that. I need that to happen for me to understand and really appreciate the movie the whole way. So give me Evan Rachel Wood.
Okay. So I'm going to recast Caleb. And if there's one guy that I can think of that can somehow fall for this plot a little bit more by Ava, then help me out. What's the guy's name again?
Caleb?
Gleeson?
Yeah, Gleeson. It's Elijah Wood.
Huh.
Interesting.
Might have been a little old.
Not really. He's younger than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got kind of that sort of doe-eyed look to him that he could be manipulated in that sense.
I feel like he could. I mean, we've seen in his performances he can bring out a lot of emotion, and maybe I can just imagine him like at that scene trying to figure out if he's a robot or not, like tweaking, literally almost like. Like,
yeah,
I would feel like that scene would be a lot more powerful if his like hand was shaking when he had the razor blade.
Sure.
It almost just seems like to Gleeson, here we go, and just do it. Where like Elijah Wood, you could see that paranoia and that timidness and everything throughout this movie with the character.
Yeah, he has that look of like the big eyes, and then he like starts to quiver a little bit. Yeah, he's got that nailed down. I agree, Austin.
Gotcha.
Justin?
I wouldn't, it's one of those movies where, and I always hate this question because when movies come out, it's like they are the way they are because of their cast. And if you change the cast, it makes it a totally different movie. But I love Alicia Vikander in this movie. I think it would be really interesting to see her character played by Eva Green, who I've mentioned before. She played Vesper in Casino Royale. She's been in a bunch of Tim Burton movies lately. She's very dark and gothic, and she's got a very mysterious quality to her. And I feel like she could manipulate you into falling in love with her while also having very treacherous motives. Like I'm sure you guys have seen some of the stuff that she's been in. She was in Dumbo lately. She was in Dark Shadows. She was in the 300 sequel. She's just got a very mysterious quality to her where I feel like she could make you fall in love with her, but also have, deeper, darker secrets in there.
Are you ready for this twist?
Okay.
Is that she was playing a character in 2014 named Ava in the Sin City sequel.
Yeah, she's the dame to kill for.
Yeah,
she's
crazy.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, and then finally we got to give it a score.
9.
9.
9 out of 10. It's not Social Network good, but damn do I love this movie.
It is a really good movie. I think it's better than Social Network.
Of course you do. Yeah,
not as good as The Departed, but better than
Yeah.
Social Network. That's the score.
Yeah.
Can't wait till we actually is on Netflix because that's gonna be okay.
Austin, what's your score?
I'm right up with just this movie surprised me a lot. Give it a 3.
A what, bud?
9.3.
9.3. I liked this movie a lot, and I, as normal, liked the movie more after the discussion. I think that it's just a prequel to The Matrix. Justin doesn't believe me. To me, though, I think not falling in love with the robot, to me, I think is like a really big deal. That's the whole point of the movie, and I missed that for whatever reason. So I'm going to give it an 8.7. I'm going to go a little bit under. So.
It's pretty high for you.
It is.
Yeah,
high.
it's pretty high.
That's I believe that was right around where Goodfellas was around the 8s. So, yeah. All right. This concludes Thoughts from the Movies. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week. It'll be Justin's pick. So hopefully we'll get something to really chew on that's artsy and beautiful and not bloody and sci-fi. And
Yeah.
So,
I'll let you guys know.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.